Hey everybody, Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's doing well. So as promised, in spite of everything with severe weather, we were able to live up to my word here, and we're going to be doing the December outlook. Today's last day of November, so make sure you smash that like button just for simply being able to keep adherence to the schedule that we had put out there. The climate outlook will be in the video up in the morning the next day, so hopefully you're looking forward to that. Some very interesting stuff actually lies ahead here, so if you're new here, definitely subscribe if you're watching. And then, of course, hit that share button because I'm pretty sure some people might want to know about what's about to happen here. So, getting into things with this again, precipitation outlook, not too much has changed from the last time we talked about this. Typical of an El Nino pattern is which is what we've been talking about for a while. We've been in an El Nino setup, and we're going to remain in it to actually a good chunk of 2024. We'll talk about that more in the winter outlook video, but usually a characteristic of El Nino will be, especially a stronger El Nino, will often be the southeast being a little bit more active, a little bit more in the way of rainfall especially, and then also the northwest tends to be pretty active. Northern states end up being a little bit drier. Some of those storm systems may also veer off to the north here, so we may see below average precipitation. As I've said in all of the outlooks that I make, and I'll always keep saying it, just because you see this below average area here in a slightly darker shade, it doesn't necessarily mean you won't get any rain or any sort of precipitation at all. You still will, but it won't be what you're used to seeing, or at least there's a chance that it isn't going to be what you're used to seeing. For a lot of us, we're still dealing with equal chances, so we'll probably see a couple of storm systems come through here. The variance between what you see on an average throughout the month of December may vary by about an inch or two. It could be slightly above, could be slightly below. Also, another indicator that I think the weather pattern is going to become even more active as we go throughout the month of December will be the fact that we're seeing that above average chance of precipitation over here towards Alaska as well. Also, there's a couple other inklings that lead me to think that we could see some additional help in regards to activity as well. So one other thing to make note of here is the monthly temperature outlook. We see that we're definitely dealing with a pretty sizable swath of very much above average temperature chances, or a higher percentage chance of above average temperatures, I should say. It's about 50 to 60%. And then over across a large part of the country here, we're dealing with 40 to 50% chances spreading all the way up through the northeast, through the mid-Atlantic, the south, then through the plains, and even towards the northwest a little bit. Will this impact our precipitation chances? Not necessarily, but some of these areas that may be looking for a snowstorm may see sometimes rain, depending on the timing of the cold blast. That's really what it's ultimately going to boil down to. The only area actually that has a below average chance of below average temperature possibilities are over towards Alaska. But that does also lead me to think, though, that there will be some chances for some cold blast as well. So while, yes, this is supposedly the final outlook for December, and ultimately it wouldn't surprise me if we did see a slight uptick in the above average temperature category, where we could see maybe about a degree or two, maybe 3 degrees above average in Fahrenheit. It wouldn't surprise me if a couple of these areas ended up going a little bit towards equal chance, maybe towards cold here. But this is basically what I have to go off of right now. So we're just going to stick with this for now. But I would say maybe towards this chunk of the northeast here, and maybe it could be a little bit further off to the east here too, but this is just a rough estimation on my part. But it wouldn't surprise me if I saw maybe Washington, Oregon, a couple of spots here seeing below average chances. But that being said, we'll go ahead and start to get into the model data, because the cool thing about this final outlook, once we get towards the end of the month, if we go to the CFS model, we can actually start to look at the exact what the jet stream may start to look like. Not exactly what it will look like, I should say, because at the end of the day, we know that this changes at the drop of a dime. So can't read into it too much, but this is a good indicator of what lies ahead here. Don't want to jump forward yet, but looking at the upper level wind pattern, this is kind of what we're working with right now. We have this low pressure area. This is going to mainly end up being a warm core to start out with. but we're not necessarily looking for forecasts. We're mainly looking for the troughs and the ridges. These are going to be the early warning signs of potential shifts in the weather right now, and also active storm patterns. But you can see that we have plenty of troughing going on to start out the month. Then as time goes on, we see a really strong ridge start to take place here, or really a high amplitude ridge at the very least, that comes in after the first week of December. So this is what's going to result in a big warm up, and this is where we start to see a shift from a negative PNA to more of a positive PNA. But just as quickly as that starts to occur, we start to see more troughing begin to occur, and what looks like a really stout storm system with a big cold shot coming into play. This is going to be due to, in theory, what might be early signs of a polar vortex trying to develop. We have been seeing some stratospheric heating, and I'm going to get into that later in the video and why that is, but I think this is going to play a big part in potentially the holidays ahead here. While I can't guarantee that that's going to be the case for sure, I do see some I do have some reasons to have that inclination right now, I should say. But as time goes on here, we do see this trough begin to push further off to the east here. So it looks like really we're going to be in a flip-flop pattern. This is where we get to hour 384. This is at GFS range right here. So once we pass that, we're really getting into the land of the unknown here. So take this with a grain of salt from this point. But from that point, you can see a classic negative PNA setup, where we see this troughing out to the west, ridging out to the east. And my concern with this would be, if this does come to fruition, would be the threat of severe weather. Keep in mind, over 400 hours out. This is usually not even a time frame that we look at because of how far out it is. But fact of the matter is, with this troughing coming into play and potentially really strong mid-level jet here, this could cause some problems ahead in the days ahead. And look at the time frame too, right around the 21st. So that has to be watched very closely. We have another cold shot that might try to kick in right around and just after Christmas Day if this comes to fruition. But fact of the matter is, this is looking really active, looking very choppy at times. So basically, this could mean that while we may be expected to be predominantly above average by a few degrees, don't think the cold shots aren't coming. That's pretty much what I'm getting off these indicators right now. And we can further validate that by looking at the height anomaly. Keep in mind, like I said before, it's pretty much the same rule in regards to the jet stream. This can all change so very easily, so take it with a grain of salt yet again. This is where we are currently. This weekend and heading into the start of next week, nice little cold air mass kicking in here. Could have some active weather here. Could have a winter storm possibly again towards the Great Lakes and maybe even the Ohio Valley this time around. But what we really need to watch is towards the middle of the month in particular. Start to see that warm air kicking back in, but we do see a couple of stout storm systems here and there. And that one in particular interests me around the 10th into the 11th time frame. It'll be interesting to see how this ends up turning out, because it almost looks like we get an interaction between these two systems start to phase, and as a result there could be a winter storm possible here and maybe severe weather towards the mid-Atlantic if this holds out. Like 252 hours out, pretty long way, easily could change, but definitely something to keep an eye on. But this could also turn into a pretty big interior northeasterly storm as well, so that has to be watched extremely closely. And then here we go, starting to see this little pattern flip here. We see a brief change from a positive PNA here, seeing that cold air mass begin to take shape here around the 16th. And then just as quickly as that happens, we shift all the way to the other extreme here. Now we're dealing with a negative PNA, really dominant cold around the west and warmer air around the east. But in time, eventually, the cold air mass will start to shift back east, especially towards the holiday time frame. And this is where things kind of get interesting for me right now, between hour 600 and beyond. Now, what will this mean for the holidays? Too far out to tell, but fact of the matter is that there are some things that I'm already watching before the month even starts. The best thing we can all do is stay tuned and keep our eye to the weather here. And then this is right towards New Year's Day. We kind of back towards that transitional phase between the pattern here, so to speak. So I'm betting maybe a couple of you are wondering, okay, so how are you able to tell that there's like stratospheric heating? How are you able to tell that there's going to be cold shots coming, even though it's a above average month potentially? And I'm going to show you how on this model here. So we've gone beyond the US here now. We're actually looking at the North Pole a bit now. We're mainly looking, particularly in this one, towards Greenland. What we look for towards Greenland is whether we're seeing above average pressure here and temperatures, or if we're seeing below average here, because that's critical. This is what we call the North Atlantic Oscillation. Heavily impacts the weather across the globe, especially between Europe and the US, especially the eastern US. And when we're in a negative phase, which isn't what we're in actually, it's the opposite, we tend to be a little bit warmer right now. And it seems like we were just in a negative phase because you see this cold air beginning to move out. But right around Greenland right now, we're actually in the opposite. We're dealing with increased pressure here, and this is what's going to allow some extra cold air to move in also. And as this continues to progress here, you can see those cold shots coinciding along with that. And then also there's another oscillation that's critical to the US here. I talked about this in more detail in one of my Weather Nerd 101 videos, and that's the Arctic Oscillation. You can kind of see it a little bit more prevalent here. You see the increased pressure and the temperature here. Usually it's a lot cooler up here, and whenever it is cooler, what ends up happening is that cold air doesn't really move much. But when you have this increased pressure, look at the movement that begins to occur here. All of this is circling around that Arctic circle thanks to this Arctic Oscillation. And you can see that multiple times we end up seeing little cold shots coming in here and there. Usually this will end up being, if not right next to Alaska, usually a little bit further off to the south here towards Western Canada. We'll go back again, you'll kind of see the same thing. It's all going to end up kind of going along that same track here. Usually whenever we see this occur in a negative phase, we end up seeing little rivets like here, 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 here. It's a bad example here. I'm not a great artist, so I want you to understand that, but you kind of see. But if you actually were to set this back in motion here, watch, you kind of see the ideas here still. So that's why the AO and NAO, excuse me, are extremely crucial when it comes to weather forecasting in particular. But that, and there's one other thing to make note of here. If we look right here, this is also another tell that maybe the polar vortex is coming into play. So whenever you start to see a little bit of stratospheric heating, which is usually indicated by this pressure nod right here, whenever we start to see that warming begin to happen, that usually is a sign that we're going to see a pretty big shift and cold air could be possible. Mainly thinking that's what we were going to be seeing towards the west as we get towards the middle half and maybe the back end of December. So if you're out west, this video is definitely oriented towards you. To the east though, don't think I've forgotten about you. You need to be paying attention as well. But that being said, that's all I got for you guys in this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Smash that like button, decimate that subscribe button, and obliterate that share button. Until next time, this has been Tired Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you soon. Take care and have a good night.